Hello, Tim. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Karl. Always great to be on. We have a little thing going on. You on my podcast, me and Howard on yours. It seems to be working.
It's almost become. I think we call it a saga now, don't we? It's had an extended shelf life with
Yeah,
with
exactly.
reciprocated conversations. But the reason I wanted to get you on today, amongst other things, it's always great to catch up, is to discuss this wonderful book that you've written and I've got in my hands, which, as we said before I started, came amazingly quickly from your homeland in Canada to my place in the UK, which was fantastic. It's a book called Getting Unstuck: The Seven Transformational Practices for Golf Nerds, which we'll go into. But what struck me, Tim, was when I picked up the book, how it's a lovely size, it's a great feel to it, but what an amazing picture you've got on the front cover. Maybe if you could go into a bit of detail about how that picture, the photograph, came about.
Well, thank you. Um, well, I was the coach of the men's and women's golf team at the University of Guelph. And I think it was 2021. It was my last year, and it was the national championship, and we were in near a village of Bromont, Quebec, and it's kind of a mountainous area. And during the third round of the four-round championship, there was a rain delay. So, obviously they want to get this thing in, on the in 4 days. So they sent the players out to play as many holes as they could until dark. And my player Xavier Aurora was on this green. And I'm behind it. And I'm just like, the sun is starting to set, and the color was just amazing.
Mm.
So I just took out my iPhone and I just snapped a few pictures, and it turned out to be amazing. I've taken a lot of I used to be a deep photography nerd,
Right.
and so I maybe know a little bit about photography to be dangerous. But of all the golf pictures I've ever taken, I went, that is amazing because of the color of it, and the designer just did a lovely job of sort of the symmetry of it and everything.
The colour's amazing, and as you say, it's this guy putting out with this wonderful sunset in the background, and it kind of reminds me of that great video clip I've mentioned many times on my podcast with Fred Shoemaker, the practice of practice. And
Oh yeah.
he's hitting balls against the backdrop of the mountain, hitting these little sort of stinging low rope draws. But looking at the picture on your book, it kind of taps into an almost spiritual dimension to the game, something other than the game itself.
Oh yeah, well that's very interesting you picked up on that, because I really do believe that golf has five major components to it. There's the physical, the technical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual.
Mm.
And that's part of the thing that struck me about that book. It's almost like the sun is showing us that it's like a part of us that's untapped, that sometimes it's sometimes mysterious. We don't know what's going on. And the it's the sun is setting, but it also could equally be rising,
Mm.
showing us, new possibilities, our own capabilities, those types of things. So yeah, that's cool that you that resonates with you like that.
It's interesting just tapping into the even the question about the spiritual side of the game, because it's kind of it's not the average conversation that you have in the bar after a round of golf, is it? Or dare we even go there after a round of golf? But I think I think for these days, and I don't know what your take is on this. I'm getting more conversations where people are perhaps asking deeper questions of the game and the purpose of it all. And I know that's a big part of your book there. But what would your interpretation be of the spiritual side of the game?
Well, I really believe in many ways. Again, here's going to be our probably our first or second reference to Fred Shoemaker. He was on your podcast a while ago, and I remember him saying that golf is not a metaphor for life.
Mm,
Golf is life.
mm,
And I just I just so resonated with that, because that's my belief, my conviction that golf is life and life is golf. And the way we show up and everything really it's an provides insight into how we view ourselves.
mm,
how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to the world, how we perceive the world. And in many ways, that could be looked through as psychological.
mm,
But I also view that golf is a portal for viewing our true selves,
mm.
not the self that we generally associate with in terms of
Create.
our ego, our
Yeah.
persona,
Yeah.
the the wall we put up, the armor to
Mm,
protect ourselves. And so to me, golf is a real spiritual game because it allows us, if we investigate, to understand ourselves a lot more and who we truly are.
mm, mm. And I think within that sort of understanding of a deeper level, there is a connection to all things, isn't there? And within that connection to all things, then, and I've talked about this so many times on the podcast, people are probably bored of hearing it now, that whether the golf course is a threatening place or whether it's a place of opportunity. And I think that picture on the front of your book, it strikes you as just a wonderful opportunity. The guy's trying to hole a putt, but it almost like it doesn't matter. He's just within a powerful experience there, trying to hole a putt, but within a connection to something bigger than himself, and the golf course is part of that.
Oh, that's really cool. I really do think that you see that whether you think it depends on your belief system. For some
Yeah.
people, God, some people, universe, energy. But I think there's a connection there to all this unified connection. And I think that what happens for us in golf is that we get really sidetracked, particularly about our own stories that we carry,
Mm,
our belief systems, our perceptions of the world, that we have to particularly live up to a certain standard. And we've talked about this on our podcasts, our mutual podcast, if you will, is that just like you said, do we view golf course as a place to thrive, to experiment, to create, or is it a place to test
mm,
and possibly be a threat? You know, am I able to, instead of someone having a putt to win a major championship and just see what unfolds, this is a test of their identity, their legacy, all that. And we just
mm,
make it out to be far more threatening than I think golf really is. It really is an environment where if we really can tap into being free to be who we really are and
mm,
tap in particularly to our innate brilliance. I
mm.
mean, as a consequence of being a human being, we are brilliant.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have evolved,
There's a
for
few
gosh
there's a
sakes.
few billion years of evolution gone into what we are, isn't there? And the ability to move things to objects, throw things, use tools in our hand is part of our evolution as effective human beings. And I think what we're tapping into, what we're talking about here is, and I welcome your take on this. Have we? And I'm going to answer my own question, but I'll ask it anyway. Have we really fallen into the trap of intellectualizing the game to such a degree that for a lot of people it cuts off that ability to tap into something greater, and that finding a way of holding a putt or finding a way of just hitting an amazing shot in a certain situation that isn't perhaps coming so much from our intellect, it's coming from a different place.
Well, I agree with you 1,000%. Again, so here's if this was a drinking game, I'd be taking my second shot. Uh, Fred Shoemaker allowed me to see that I already had everything I needed to be a good golfer.
Mm,
I still needed to develop skill and awareness of such things as posture, alignment,
mm,
those types of things. But what I learned is that I already had, as a consequence of being a human being, I had this ability to connect to a target, to
mm.
throw something, to be
Yeah.
able, and just to connect and use the talents that I have to develop the skills to be able to do that. But being a human being, I also want to control everything in my life.
Mm,
I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to feel anxiety. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel shame. So what did I do? Like a lot of people, I learned early in my life that if I amassed as much information as I
mm,
could
mm,
and I knew a lot, then that would help me protect me against pain and allow me to get what I craved.
Mm.
And what I craved, I grew up caddying at a golf club in London, Ontario, and I caddied for these scratch golfers, champion, club champion type of a guy. I wanted to be like them.
Mm.
I wanted to have the swagger of confidence and paint the sky and putt like gods like they did. So what did I do? I think like a lot of particularly men,
Mm.
we amass as much information as we can.
Mm.
Books, videos. Now it's, you got the computer in your pocket, you can scroll forever and get whatever information you want. And so that information gives us this degree of hope that if we apply this, which apparently came from an expert,
Mm. Mm.
that I will be able to do this and I will feel better and I will be happy, which
Mm.
apparently is the greatest thing we can all aspire to in this world, is to be happy.
Mm. I mean, one of the things that you talk a lot about in the book, which I thought was wonderful, is the power of journaling.
Mm.
And here we are. I've got my Mind Caddy journal here. Go into some. I'll give me your thoughts, Tim, on the best way of journaling, because what I like about what you've written is I think when journaling is a kind of another exercise to do, and you've got to write this and you've got to write that and you've got to write something else. I think it becomes just another thing to do like the rest of it. Why would you say it's a good thing to journal, but to journal in a way that gives you individual scope to go in whatever direction you feel is necessary?
Well, I have a conviction about writing. Whatever it is, you put the pen at the top of the page and then you just start writing
Mm.
and just let it go and let it go and let it go. And a lot of people, I'll start with this. A lot of people resist writing because they don't think they're very good at it
Mm.
and they judge it. If they can just let that go, even if they could write, I know this is shit as they write, or my dad or my English teacher wouldn't like it, but just keep going and just to start writing. And then you start to tap into the stuff that you want to express, the
Mm.
things that you're feeling, whether it being, feelings of being low or the things you're excited about. And you just start to just let it go. And what I find is that through that expression, we start to tap into the deeper parts of ourselves, perhaps
Mm.
that, as I say, that spiritual part of ourselves, the memories, those connections to why we like the game. And we just start to have a we delve into a place of understanding ourselves in a deeper way that we may not have tapped into before.
Mm.
And so I just think it's on all kinds of levels, it's a great way to express particularly those things that we don't feel safe to share. You mentioned earlier that, it's not like you go out on the patio after, your Saturday morning round and, hey guys, I really felt connected to the infinite here today. you know, we wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
But
God whispered to me out there on the 14th to hit a 5-iron.
yeah, exactly. He said, and make sure you finish your backswing. No, but when you journal, that's your private place.
Yes.
So there's a place where you can let go all the stuff that you wouldn't feel safe to let go with the guys on the patio.
Mm.
Um, but that what that does, there's a cathartic release that
Yeah.
happens for people when they do let go that stuff that generally just pings around in our brain, to kind of, it's like a toxin that roils around in our gut, making us feel sick. But when we give voice to that, whether using our actual voice or writing it down, there's a there's a release. It's almost like we start to gain distance from what was going on. And in that way, we gain perspective. In many ways, Karl, I did it for years and years. You have another disappointing round, drive home, slam the car door, no radio or nothing, and just in this pissed off, sulking mood and get home. And all because, three putts and, failed to break 80 or something.
You duffed a wedge on the last or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, but when you write about it, just let it go. Then you go like, really? This is what's killing my entire afternoon and making me a pain in the ass to live with? You gain freedom from these things through the distance you get by writing about them.
So would you say that one of the things that you can get from journaling is you get a beneficial perspective on the game a little bit quicker than it? I
Yeah.
think the sad thing is, and we are both past 21, unfortunately, and I wished I had a perspective on the game when I was 21, something similar to what I have now. It would have been an infinitely better experience. But maybe we have to go through all of that. Not maybe, I'm sure we do have to go through that. But ultimately, a lot of this is what you write about and talk about with Howard and I talk about is finding a perspective on the game that allows you to get the maximum experience from it for you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, I mean, Karl, and your listeners need to know this. You're all over this book. I mean, you are a great model and mentor for me. So you're, like I say, you're all over this book. And I remember one of the things that you said to me earlier, I think it was in your podcast or a chat we were having, is that it's not our thinking that is the problem in golf. It's our relationship to our thinking.
Mm,
And that's, to me, the benefit of that perspective is to understand, whoa, I'm in it right now. I'm in this place of self-flagellating, anger, and on the golf course, trying to solve a problem, and then at the same time trying to solve a problem while I'm leaving all my irons out to the right and beating the living crap out of myself that yet again I suck and I always will suck.
mm,
Um, what the writing does in this general awareness, particularly as we get older,
mm,
and the benefit of some gray hair, is we start to mature and we start to see ourselves in different ways.
mm.
There's a writer I really enjoy named Richard Rohr, and he has a book. It's called Falling Upward,
Right.
and it's about basically as we get old in our second part of our life, we often see ourselves in a different light that's not so attached. Our identity isn't attached to how much money we make, the car I drive, the my index, the score I shoot,
Mm,
and and yeah, it would have been great to have that at 21.
mm.
But that's the way it goes. We have to go through these experiences. And that's the value, I think, of paying attention to our own experience, not the experience or what we're taught by the experts on YouTube or
Mm.
wherever. It's paying attention to our own experience and seeing the value in that and growing from those experiences. And I think we discount our own experiences to our peril.
I think we become numb to it, don't we? Because we're being bombarded by so much advice. And again, I'll raise the glass for the third time with a Fredism. Um, I think that is the same for the golf swing as well, isn't it? That we become so bound by all the do's and don'ts. We don't sense what is actually going on in our swing. We don't, 30 years ago now when I went to Fred and did the school, and the idea of just making a golf swing without trying to fix something was just such a shock to me. I don't think for 20 years I'd ever made a golf swing where I wasn't trying to fix something, but actually to make a golf swing where I was just aware of what is actually happening was
Yeah,
really liberating.
oh, I know exactly. And I think that there's a lot of your listeners right now who are nodding and going, yeah, have I ever made a golf swing without thinking about turning my left hip, maintaining the flex of my right knee? Many people never have. So I'm just going to tell a quick story that's in my book. So when I was writing about golf in the 90s, um, I was just as deep into being a golf nerd as I am now. Um, but I was also all as a journalist, I was naturally drawn to books and I was interviewing PGA Tour players. I covered like Seven Masters, US Opens, etc. I had all this access. So I was trying to apply all this information to perfecting my golf game. I was just immersed in information. So my father belonged to as a family, we belonged to this golf club, Sunningdale, on this side of the pond.
Yeah.
And he would invite me to play, with his buddies on some Saturday mornings. Well, Karl, I'd be so nervous. I'd be so tight, and I would just choke my guts out. It'd just be terrible. And I'd just be this sulking, miserable lech, that guy is who we all don't want to be. And my dad would say sometimes, "Hey, pal, on the 10th tee, let's just have some fun." Of course, I'd think, there's more of your unwanted, I wouldn't say it. Here's more of your unwanted fatherly advice, And then, of course, I continue to be methodical and pump the ball into a farmer's field. And then he would say this. He'd say, "Let's see your don't give a shit swing." And I kind of have nothing to lose, Karl, and pow, straight down the pike. I wouldn't be thinking of anything. I would just swing. And I'd hit these, not perfect, but my golf game would just become immeasurably better. So in the book, I say that my dad's don't give a shit swing was just a crude forerunner of get out of your own way. Yeah. But it took me about, 15, 20 years to understand the wisdom
of what he was
in
saying.
That. To just swing, man, just let it go. And that it took people like you and Fred Shoemaker for me to finally understand that, because I was just frankly so caught up in my own belief system, the way I perceive the world, the way I perceive myself. And it was just this way of being. So, and that really is the premise of my book. Is the core premise of it is that we are largely unaware of the behaviors that keep us stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wasn't aware of those things until I started to just have some experiences where I could kind of see myself and go, "Oh, buddy,
what is going on?"
Really? Yeah. And what was really happening. And then I was able to do things like swing a golf club and rather try to will my body parts to do something. Is just to kind of witness and observe it.
Yeah.
And it turned out actually I had a pretty good golf swing.
Yeah. I have a similar story, Tim, to that. I remember years ago playing in a pro-am abroad. And the guys, me included, we'd been struggling, and it was one of those horrendous sort of. It was best. It was going to be best part of 5.5, 6 hours to get around the golf course. It was taking forever, and we were obviously out of the tournament, and we're never going to win anything. And we stood on one tee. To the left was the sea, and I had a bunch of balls in my bag, and I said, "Let's just set a few free." And we actually just stood there on the tee, hitting a couple of balls each into the sea, and all of a sudden, every one of us who'd just been hitting it sideways all day, to a man, everybody just unleashed these bombs off the tee. And it's the same principle, isn't it? That one guy said to me, "So, well, that's great." He said, "I can't miss the sea." Can I? So I'm sure you're going to give it a try, but. And it was just amazing just to see that. And where had that been for the previous 3.5 hours? It had been bound in formula and theory and do's and don'ts.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the thing that is amazing, is that if you say this to the average golfer, and the average golfer says, "I want to be consistent."
Yeah.
And I want to hit it farther, and I want to hit it more farther and more accurately. And if you say, "You know what, you have a golf swing already," they say, "Well, dude, I'm slicing it, I'm duffing it." What do you mean? I said, "You have a golf swing within you. Our job as a coach and a player is to draw that out of you. And the way we do that is relate to a target and understanding what's our intention here. What's the puzzle we're trying to solve? What does this golf ball need to do?" And when we start to do that, we get out of our heads of all the minutia of what we do with our right elbow. And that's the stuff that I'm convinced that's the stuff that keeps people stuck, is not being able to invest in their own brilliance. And through that, we start to realize, wow, I can do this, but there's no getting around it. It takes time. I'm not saying that, and you're not saying that we have to discount, swing things like concepts like swing on plane, be aligned, and low point, things like that. If you want to become a good golfer, you need to experience and learn those things for sure. but it's not through formula.
No, no. You know, physics dictates that we need the face pointing somewhere in relation to that targeted impact, don't we? We need to strike it out of the middle of the golf club. We need to have the low point in the correct place. But I think what we're saying is there's different ways of going about that, as opposed to just strict formula of you must do this A, B, C, and follow somebody else's rules.
Oh, absolutely. You see it constantly. If you go to some clubs and there's some players there, and they might even have a portable TrackMan or something, and they're working on things like posting up or whatever, but they can't even hit the planet
Yeah.
with the ball because they're working on something instead of, okay, how is this experience of swinging this tool, this golf club, what influence is it having on where the ball goes? And yeah, you have to understand things like the face dictates where the ball goes. And just, I remember I had was coaching with this woman, 72 years old, never played golf before, didn't really have a history of sports. Particularly, she did not have a history of sports like racket sports or where you're using something to hit a ball. So it took 7 lessons for her to get the ball up in the air.
Right.
But she persisted. And then once she got that, she hit it dead left all the time. She just, and so I asked a few people, and then, well, she's doing this, doing that, kind of your standard stuff. And I just started saying to her, once she understood that where the face dictated where the ball went, I said, let's do this. You choose whether you're going to hit it this target to the left, to the center, to the right. And she just picked, I said, which one? So she said, to the right. She hit it. Miraculously, the ball went to the right. Now hit it left. Hit it left. Because she was now starting to draw on her own experience of what she was going to do. And from that, she started to learn. And, so it's amazing what people can do when they start to have their own experience and draw on that. And because the more you draw on your own experience and you stay on a path, one of the things I talk about in the book is having a sense of mission of where you're going with your game and staying with it rather than trying this, trying that. We could really make this a YouTube diatribe, but I'm going to try and stay off that. But if you keep working on on similar things, you gain more awareness because you get a deeper experience as you go into them.
A path with a heart.
Yeah, well said.
I know you spent a lot of time and you wrote a book about him. Tim. We discussed him last time, Mo Norman, who I do find him fascinating. Anybody who's ever spent any time with him, I'm always keen to find some Mo stories. Do you think that Mo, because he was largely self-taught, was an epitome of what we've just been talking about? That he found a way, he found his way of doing it through his own direct experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was completely self-taught. Yeah, and he just did. I was really fascinated by how he developed his golf swing. And I wrote a chapter of it in my book, The Feeling of Greatness. And it was interesting. When I wrote that chapter, I thought it was kind of self-serving. Like this was just to satisfy my own curiosity. But that was the chapter that Golf Digest excerpt in their Mo Norman piece, because I was so fascinated on how he did this on his own. Mo used to say, I couldn't afford golf lessons. I mean, when he was a kid and then a young adult, he worked at a bowling alley. He didn't have any money. So he just developed these things on his own. And I really think that Mo Norman is the most kinesthetically gifted golfer I ever ran into or heard of, because he would just do things just over and over again to get what they feel. He used to tell me that he'd go to bed. Now, some of this I think might be apocryphal, and sometimes the legends would tell you legendary stories. He would, after hitting 1,000 golf balls in a day, is that what leg feels more tired? What hand feels like it wants to do more than the other one? And it was just like I never heard anyone, and never anyone since, talk about the physical sensations that they had hitting a golf ball. And that's the key point, is that the overwhelming majority of golfers are disconnected from what they're actually feeling because they're in their heads trying to use their mind to will their body parts to do something. And when we're doing that, we're still stuck in our heads, and we don't actually feel or observe or sense what our body's actually doing, which is crazy in golf.
But more than any other sport, we're disconnected from the implement in our hand, aren't we? Cricketers are pretty attuned to the bat. Tennis players are pretty attuned to the racket. Pool players to the cue. But yet we see most golfers pay attention to almost anything other than the golf club.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've been through this hundreds of times too. I'm sure thousands. Is that most of the times golfers seem mostly preoccupied with their hips or their shoulders, neither of which swings the club. We, you know, we actually, Nelson McWade, I love, I think I screwed up his first name.
Kendall.
Kendall, thank you. Yes. I love his stuff because he talks about we hold a tool and we swing it. And I love his hammer analogy. Yeah, I mean, that just makes so much sense. And one of the things that I do a lot of times, I had a fellow I was coaching last week, hadn't seen him for 3 weeks because he went on vacation. He's still kind of a novice and he's hitting it sideways everywhere. And I said, can you just hit it just off the deck, like 25 feet in front of us, or that might be, I don't know what is a meter. I'll stay with feet. And he just started to chip it. I said, just feel how far you have to take the club back with your hands. And then he just started to hit it more solid. Okay, now let's go a little farther flag. And then he started to hit full iron shots. And all he's focusing on is the feeling in his hands holding on to the club. And he's hitting, Karl, so solid, divot, everything. And he's a novice. He looks great. But he's not trying to do anything except propel this ball to the intended target by swinging the tool. So it can be done.
Yeah. What would your suggestions be on that then, Tim, for somebody beginning to explore that perhaps for the first time, of just gaining a deeper connection to the golf club?
Well, I would, okay. You remember your example you said about with Fred Shoemaker? You said, I think Fred invited you just to enjoy your golf swing. Same thing.
Putting stroke it was, yeah.
Exactly.
Which was a real novelty for me.
I've done it in putting clinics. I've done just enjoy your stroke, and people look at me like, what? I'm not trying to do anything. No, just enjoy your stroke. And what happens is so what I would recommend is just go out on a putting green and just throw down one ball. And just as you make your stroke, just observe, witness, and enjoy the feeling of putting a ball. And what happens when you do that, you start to just become that much more aware of what's actually happening. You start to feel the club head perhaps going back. And if it's a longer putt, you can feel a slight hinging, if you're a right-hander, slight hinging in the trail hand. And then you might feel that the club and maybe your lead wrist starts to, unhinge a little bit as it goes, or the club starts to just, close down post impact. And you start to notice this stuff. And you start to notice things like that your lower body, say, is very quiet. And you're actually watching the ball get hit, which tells you have your head is quiet and not moving. And you learn from your own experience. And that's how we learn anything. I mean, this has been talked about over and over again, but still people don't seem to get it, is that somehow as human beings, we learn to do some pretty wild stuff, like walk, go down a set of stairs. Like, really, I mean, that is it. When you walk down a set of stairs, you're kind of throwing yourself out into space a little bit, but we don't think about having to do anything with our ankles or our calf muscles. I mean, if we, if we went down sets of stairs thinking the way we do about the golf swing, we'd probably end up in a heap at the bottom of the stairs.
What it just made me think then, Tim, what struck me watching the Olympics this year, I mean, my goodness, every 4 years you end up watching stuff that you would never ever watch ever in life, and you sit there transfixed by skateboarding and breakdancing and
Yeah.
shooting and all this kind of stuff that you would never ever. But things like, seeing these athletes on skateboards and the incredible stuff that they do, and the flips and the moves and all the rest of it, and you just think that cannot be taught in the way that you teach golf and the way that we teach golf. That can only surely be learned through experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm
That
sure
and
there's some basics. I mean, I don't know the first thing about skate, but I'm sure there's some kind of basics about balance and things like that. But it must be just experience, experience, experience. Fall off, fall to the left, fall to the right, fall forward, fall backwards, and the brain organizes.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's our friend Ed Collins who talks about that, how in golf the brain self-organizes. Yeah, that and what it is so it's interesting you went there with skateboarding. I use that analogy with a lot of people around golf. It's that it's learning where our center of gravity is.
Mm,
And skateboarders are masters at being able to control where their center of gravity is. But
mm,
it's like riding a bike. You learn to do it, and you can't write a dissertation on how you learned how to ride a bike. You
mm,
just got it. And it's the same with golf. But again, I think because we want to control our world,
mm,
particularly, yes, we're blessed with a frontal cortex,
mm,
and that allows us to think through things, and we have, real world problems we need to fix and whatnot. But I think even with things that we think are problems we have, is that we have experiences and have ways of working through these things that often are not connected to doing a pros and cons sheet
mm,
or Excel spreadsheet or anything. It's almost like I love Stephen King, the who's written how many horror books. He has a neat expression. So when he comes to a problem in a story, let's say some dialogue or a plot thing he doesn't know where to go with, what he says is that he gives it over to the boys in the basement, basically his subconscious. So he'll
mm,
go for a walk, he'll leave it for the day or sleep on it, and then the next day he'll kind of go back to it, or maybe he might be just in the shower or something, and go bing, there it is.
mm,
Again, I'm speaking to what I'm convinced is that we have a depth of brilliance and wisdom that we aren't even aware of.
yeah.
And it comes with the physicality of hitting a golf ball as well to a target. We have this depth of ability that when we when we're kind of taken by our ego mind and quite frankly our addictions and our compulsions to the way we think, we get in our own way. We don't allow this brilliant body to do what it can do.
Mm,
It really, I mean, like, I remember one time playing with my father back in the day, like I talked about earlier, and just chipping to a spot. And just, okay, that's my spot. Boom, chip. And like, holy cow, how do you do that? I want to know how I did that.
mm,
All it was just relating to a spot, seeing the ball go there, and then it would somehow run out of speed just around the hole.
mm,
How'd that happen? Don't know.
mm. It reminds me, from martial arts. I remember reading somewhere where Bruce Lee talked about being in a fight situation, and he said he always felt safe because he knew in a fight situation that he said it would take over, and it must have been his definition of in the basement, the boys in the, or whatever you just said with Stephen King.
Yeah.
It's kind of trusting that something in your system can organize movement to get the task done, whether that's fighting off four people coming at you trying to punch you or whatever, or hitting a golf ball in a certain direction, or coming up with a storyline in a book. That there is a deeper wisdom that if we just get out of the way a little bit more often, it will emerge. I think Scheffler's probably a great example of that, isn't he? That whether he's aware of it or not. I read a great thing the other day about his coach, Randy Smith, and about how, that he would never get drawn into technicalities with him. He was just constantly helping him become aware of where the club face was pointing. And, you see all that funky stuff that's going in his golf swing, but my God, he must be so aware of where that club face is that there must be a lot of swings where he feels out of position, but somehow it takes over to square it off, and another ball finds the middle of the fairway.
Yeah, exactly. I find that I read that same piece. That was a Golf Digest piece. Yeah, Randy Smith. And I just went, wow, that's so cool. I mean, you wouldn't teach that footwork to anybody,
No, no.
but it doesn't matter. He has this sense, he's been through that so many times and had this experience where he's just so locked into his own capabilities that
Mm.
he can just let it go. But, I think as you said a minute or so ago, that we have, oh, my dog's having a little dream there. That's cool. I'm not sure whether you're hearing that.
Okay, I'll pick that up now.
That's funny. Is we again, I think this speaks to the spiritual part of the game. We have a deeper wisdom that we're just not aware of, and every once in a while we'll tap into it. I think when you and your buds were on that tee deck hitting into the ocean, you were tapping into it.
Yeah.
And when sometimes we're in a conversation, you've talked about this, you're standing on a range somewhere, you didn't really have an agenda with your student,
Mm.
but you start talking and you start, holy man, this is some pretty good shit here.
Yeah.
And where did it come from?
Yeah.
It comes from that deep, I said that deeper, that wisdom that you have that's connected to that we connect to everything. I think that's part of what connects us as human beings. This is why Carl Jung is an amazing person to study, to learn about belief systems, our consciousness, and how there's these archetypes that we all have in our lives in terms of the way we act in certain ways that we tend to be, even people all around this planet, because we're all connected in a weird
Mm.
in a weird way. But I just think that's part of the beauty of golf, I think, is that it's really the one of the starkest way that we see ourselves,
Mm.
and it's a brilliant way to see ourselves. But we're also but that's so counterintuitive
It
to
is.
the culture we're in.
And it's also, I think, just as we're going through these various examples, I always loved the line of Jim Rohn, that the famous motivational speaker, apparently would go out into his audience and welcome everybody, and then he'd say, it's great to be here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what I've got to say today." And it, and I've had that experience, where not quite the same, but I've had that experience to a degree, where you just back off trying to be so perfect with everything, and you have a bit of an outline, and but you give yourself some freedom to just let stories emerge. But what the point I was going to come to, long-windedly, Tim, was that underneath all of this, does there have to be a willingness to accept the variety of potential outcomes to maybe access some of the things that we're talking about?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, you talk about things like detachment, acceptance. I mean, that is really, you've got to be able to accept wherever the golf ball is going to go. You have to detach your identity from your score, but that's all rather academic.
Mm.
It really is. And that's the problem that we have with this part of the game. Sometimes when you talk about the mental coaching of golf, it comes like a swing tip,
Yeah.
almost as much as, practice acceptance, which is much the same as finish your backswing.
Mm.
But I think it's if we come back to our relationship with our thinking and our relationship to ourselves, is to understand, at the end of the day, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Whatever happens today, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
Again, so it's maybe this is the fifth Fred Shoemaker reference. He says to be a golfer, you have to have a very good relationship with failure.
Mm.
You have to be able to understand that you're going to have days where you just can't hit it out of your shadow,
Yeah.
or it's just going to be like that. But it doesn't dictate who you are. And that actually, in fact, the days that you can hit it very well are the days you learn the most,
Mm.
really. But that's it for a lot of people. I mean, I'm 67. I don't feel like I learned any of this stuff until I was, close to being in my 60s, really. It takes a while. Maybe I'm more hard-headed than most, but for a lot of people, someone like, I think, Scotty Scheffler, Jordan Spieth. I use Bruce Litsky as an example in my book. It depends on. So I'll take it back to mission. So, and I think that's why it's good to have a sense of mission in your golf and in your life, so that you don't get blown off course all the time. So, uh, when I was a golf writer in the 90s, I interviewed Bruce Litsky, and he was one of the most favorite interviews I ever did. And I had the good fortune to be around people like Tiger and Jack Nicklaus, as the golf writer. But Bruce Litsky, he basically told me that the reason he played golf was so he could coach his daughter and son in baseball, and be an attentive partner, restore cars, and go bass fishing.
And didn't he only
That's
play
why
like he only played like 16 or 17 tournaments a year, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he didn't play. He never played. He didn't care about Augusta, but I forget. But he won something like, oh, I forget. I should have it at my fingertips. Something like 12 PGA Tour events,
Yeah, yeah,
7 or 8 Champions Tour events.
yeah.
He almost won the U.S. Open. I remember one time. Oh, actually, I might have that wrong. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But
He was highly successful, wasn't he?
yeah, and he just never tinkered with his golf swing. He just hit that plodding, little fade every time. And I think for him, so with Scotty Scheffler, faith and family. Jordan Spieth, it was all about his
Sister.
his sister. That was their family was around taking care of his mentally challenged sister. So golf goes up and down, but these guys, I think, because they're grounded and they have a sense of mission of what's really important in their lives, they don't get blown off course. And when they shoot a bad round, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Tim, I think we got a little bit off course from time to time there, but we had a mission and we stuck to it. And the mission was to talk about your book, and we kind of alluded to it through this chat. It's a great piece of work. These seven practices. Let people know it's available now on Amazon and all the sort of usual channels to get to it.
Yeah, Amazon is where it's at, and in the near future, probably in the new year, there'll be an Audible version and then Kindle. But if you want more information, go to my website, o'connorgolf.ca. If you like the type of stuff that I write generally, you could check me out on Substack. It's toconnor.substack.com. And of course, there's the podcast that Howard and I do called Swing Thoughts, in which Karl is a friend of show, Hall of Fame member.
Yeah, I don't know who's had the most appearances on there, but we're pushing it quite hard, really.
It's you, pal. No, there's no getting around it. You are numero uno.
No, I mean one of the things that I do love about your show, and I do listen to it every time it comes out. I think it is very, very authentic, because you and Howard shoot the breeze about your own experiences, and there's a real visceral honesty to it, which I think resonates so well.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that's a lot of that is from Howard being such a consummate professional. That guy's a plus handicap broadcaster, but I think also being a comedian as he is, we learned that when we are, it's okay to be talking about ourselves, and that's the best place to go, really. So, yeah, we get nice feedback like that it's authentic and we're willing to be vulnerable. It's a scary word for men.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks ever so much, Tim. Always a great pleasure. Thanks for coming on yet again.
Thank you, Karl.